I wasn't going to do this video, and I was struggling to think about whether I should actually do this video, but I would not recommend to do an online doctorate. And in most circumstances, it's not going to benefit you, but there is a single circumstance that I think it could benefit you. But for most of us that are thinking of doing any sort of career that it means to do research, it's just going to be too difficult. And it's not going to benefit you nearly as much as you think it's actually going to benefit you. I want to talk about why. And then I'm going to talk about and give you some suggestions in terms of when it might actually make sense for you to do that. So in the research career, and this is why you actually do a doctorate, by the way, it's just that's the only reason that makes sense in my mind, is that, and most people, if you talk to most people that are doing this, they would say that's the only reason why you're doing it. It is a research degree. You spend a great deal of time studying and thinking about something, and then you develop some sort of research from that. There is very little in terms of career development that is discussed. I did a PhD in business, and we did not talk about anything that would actually help me in terms of actually doing business stuff. The best degrees for that are usually professional degrees, like an MBA, or maybe you're thinking of doing some sort of master's degree. Now, the best thing that you can possibly do, or when this actually matters, or why it actually matters to do a PhD, is because you're doing research. And the research career has what is called kind of like a pecking order. I don't know if that's a derogatory term. If it is, I apologize. But there is a sorting mechanism that goes on. And if you talk to most people, and I encourage you to look at most university websites, this is what you'll see, is that there's actually the top universities in the world feed most of the other universities in terms of the doctorates that you get. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. That's a reality of what it actually looks like. Now, can we change that? Maybe. Is that fair? No. Is this problematic? Yes. But is this reality? Absolutely. That's the reality. The top programs feed all the other ones around the country in terms of their doctorates. So there's this very strong status effect that goes on. It's very well known. It is extremely well researched. And what it is just human dynamics that's playing out, right? We try to be fair, we try to be equitable, but there's human dynamics. So unless you go to the very top places around, it's going to be very hard to actually get a job, a career that you intend to do by doing an online degree, because most of those online degrees are not the top programs around. It's just very, very difficult. And you're going to spend a great deal of money and time and effort, and you're probably not going to get the support that you need because of an online program like that, because it's just really challenging. You need to be around people, you need a cohort, all of those sort of things that are so vitally important that we all know about in terms of doing things that are challenging. You need to be around people, you need to feel comfortable. All of those things are super, super important. Now, is there some program out there that I'm unaware of that's like an online program that gives you all of that kind of stuff? Possibly. That could potentially be the case. So I'm not going to discount all of them, but most of them, you got to be very careful. And they are very expensive in terms of what you're doing, the opportunity cost of what you're doing, and then as well as how much it's going to make. So when is it actually useful to get an online degree? What might that actually look like in terms of an online PhD or a part-time PhD, something along those lines? The only time I would recommend this is if you're actually trying to get into administration in a university, or there is some credential that you actually need within the industry that you're going into. Now, I know sometimes like teaching, for example, and you want to become a principal. I know sometimes at where my kids go to school, they have this thing where, yeah, some of them have PhDs, which I don't get. But, you know, they that might help. There's some basic things like that in terms of the environment that you're in, but if nobody has them, and if you can't see why they directly apply to you, it's just going to be too hard, right? So the only time is if it's actually a checkbox that you need for that credential, then it makes sense to do that, to actually get one of those degrees. But the thing is, where you go, what you do actually still matters at that point. If you go to a place that is going to be discounted, it's not going to help you very much, right? So you still need to go to somewhat of a legitimate place at that point in terms of this credentialing that you need. But most places, I don't understand it because it is completely outside of the realm of what you actually do and what you're actually trying to do, what the degree is all about. It just makes no sense for it to have this credentialing effect. The only reason is because it's a terminal degree, and sometimes at universities, for example, if you want to get into administration, so you want to become a certain type of administrator in an academic environment, where you are, maybe it's the excuse me, maybe you're doing an academic dean position or something like that, then the credentialing kind of makes sense. But it's still, unfortunately, it's not going to be what's called tenure track. And it's going to be very hard to get into those tenure track positions because it's so research focused. They're all like that. And so you're still going to be often in a different track, and the pay is going to be different. So, why is it that you actually want to do a degree in the first place like this? Is because of research. You're curious about the world. You don't know what you want to make a serious transition. It's a full-time, it's a hard thing to actually do. It's extremely difficult. And most people, the attrition rate is well over 50%. It's the highest of all of the degrees. At most programs, it's going to feel like that. It's going to be very difficult, and it's probably much more than you've ever expected. For most people, sometimes it's not. If you did, maybe you were a medical doctor, for example, or maybe you went into law and you're kind of used to that level of intensity. But imagine that, a level of intensity, but there's a challenge on top of it that I think you need to recognize, is that those programs have an end in sight. PhD typically doesn't. You're not really going to know what you're going to do. It's uncertain, and you're just going to feel lost most of the time. And that is normal. That's a normal part of the process. So for those of you who are thinking of doing that at this moment, I can't recommend it. If you want to do legitimate research, then you got to think about where you're actually in person and you're with other people and you're part of a cohort and you're really invested in the career. Now, if you're just doing it for credentialing, and you need it, you physically need it, right, to move up in your area, then it kind of makes sense. But in general, it just does not make sense for most people. So in terms of career outcomes, your best bet almost always are those professional degrees like MBAs and things like that are just going to really, really, really be helpful. All right, so that's it. If you like this video, give me one of those. Bye.